March 31st, Jack Dorsey came out with a long tweet article from hierarchy to intelligence, where he is looking to take his company Block and to flatten it because of AI. And so, Meg, I thought it would be great if we unpacked some of his thinking and what our perspective is on this. And so I wanted to start with something really specific. Jack outlines 3 different roles that he thinks are going to be needed going forward, and only 3. The first is ICs, or individual contributors. The second, DRIs, directly responsible individuals. And 3, player coaches, and to just eliminate hierarchy altogether. And so I wanted to talk about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, starting with the roles themselves. Let's start with the individual contributor. His idea is that, AI is going to create this like communication intelligence in the center of everything. I think that's great. Like the memory of the company, the memory of all the customer problems. And so you don't need the hierarchy to be able to bring all of that communication to people. And so there's going to be a lot more individual contributors around the edges that can just leverage this central intelligence to do their jobs. But what we've been talking about is that, in fact, there aren't going to be any individual contributors going forward because everybody's a manager. They're managing AI agents. So what are your thoughts on this particular role?
I think that this is a very reductive framework. And I think your point about the individual contributor is probably the anchor of that. I believe that we are right, that the definition of individual contributor is not a single person doing a single person's work. It's a single person organizing and orchestrating a group of agents' work. You may just be working with them like coworkers as opposed to being in charge of them, but you will be responsible for the results and how they come together to get work done. The language that we're using is too constrained based on how we understand the world today.
The next role is the directly responsible individual, the person that's cross-functional responsibility for particular outcomes. This often comes with some authority and some influence, right? Generally speaking, the directly responsible individual in current corporate America has people that actually report to them. And so they have enough clout and authoritative power that then they also have influential power. Generally speaking, the DRI is not an individual contributor with no authoritative power at all whatsoever that is completely responsible for everything. Like that is a kind of a tall order. And so I'm wondering, in this kind of model where there's no hierarchy, is just being named this sufficient?
This gives me a headache, and maybe it's because I have too much lived experience, but I think this is where the shit show begins. Typically, in larger organizations, the CEO or the head of the division or whatever will name or deputize a DRI to help make sure that they have the authority that they need to get a big project done. You usually use it in the context of a large cross-functional project where there could be uncertainty or lack of clarity of who is ultimately accountable and responsible. The idea that you're going to have a kind of scattershot without an organizational structure introduces a lot of opportunity for both bad behaviors and a lot of confusion. I have yet to see anybody named as a DRI that didn't have a particularly complicated job anyway. And in this construct, I think it's a disaster waiting to happen. Good luck to you, Jack. But I don't think this is going to go as smoothly as you think in your manifesto, if you will.
Okay, and now the last role is the player coach. And the idea is that you will have people that care about other people and mentor them
And responsible for all those people things.
do the emotional labor, but still do individual contributor stuff at the same time. I do think it's important that in today's age that you both do the work and you lead, right? If you're delegating absolutely everything from AI and then your people are delegating to AI, then like you're really far removed. So I do like that. However, like, are these people, are they just, just out of the goodness of their heart, they're just, they're good at mentoring, so they just do this on the side? None of that makes sense to me.
One of the things that I've always really struggled with in the Scrum process is, when you end up having an engineering manager that is not responsible for their team's work because their team is just on an independent Scrum team doing whatever they're doing on the independent Scrum team, I feel like that just completely a lot of the signal that you need to be a good manager and coach for people, because you're really not seeing them in the day to day. I experienced this early in my career in the consulting ranks, right? Where the person that was responsible to champion me in the performance discussion had really no clue what I was like on a project. Like, I just didn't feel like that was what you need, especially in the early parts of your career. And to your other point, the idea that you can set aside the activating humans to their best potential to somebody on the side. You're giving them all a therapist, but you're not necessarily actively helping them in their work. It feels very much that this is designed by someone who doesn't understand the importance of leadership and management and human potential and growth. I'm really a fan of asking bigger questions about design, and do we need to do what we've done in the past just because that's our pattern, or should we think from first principles and figure out what do we really need from an organizational design and structure to achieve the work? I don't feel like this construct is that, and that's, I think, where I'm feeling
But it's provocative.
exactly. My hope is it's asking the bigger question, which is very, very important. I do think that the idea of a more cohesive technology-backed context layer has a lot of promise, because this is actually an area where I feel like middle management often falls down. Today, it's very hard, in a multi-layered organization trying to drive transformative change to enable multiple parts of the organization at once. So it is true, having fewer layers can be helpful. The problem I'm seeing is going after the symptom and don't not try to get to the root cause of what problems you're trying to solve with this communication layer and this context layer, and what is the right way to organize ourselves to deliver against these new opportunities. And I don't feel like that was what this was at all. I feel like this was, oh, we're just going to throw out everything, because clearly that's old school, and come up with this new thing that has no foundation in caring about how humans work.
Yeah. We've been talking about the idea of moving from rigid hierarchies to fluid structures. And I think this is a great opportunity to do that. If you think about that DRI person, like if you could create a fluid structure around them, they're directly responsible for themselves and the individuals on that team and the AI associated, et cetera, then that can work. What's not mentioned in this and is so important is, what are the skills that everybody needs to develop in all of this context? Just having that corpus of information available to everyone isn't suddenly going to make everybody able to do their job better. It is a tool that's there, but really building that skill of curiosity, building that skill of thinking outside of your own specific domain, all of that really needs to happen for all of these different
I think what we're going to fall into is, oh, well, we have this great context layer, this centralized intelligence that understands everything. But my lived experience is getting people to pay attention and to internalize that and to understand that, or to even give a shit about that, is significantly harder. We're underestimating the need for how we bring this into the metabolism of an organization to be productive. And I just feel like this whole Jack Dorsey case is, to me, a case of fire 40%, force everybody into a very high emotional shock. I don't care how much historical medieval context you write out, that does not solve the clarity for an individual of what is my point of value in this. And I'm just a little disappointed that there wasn't any intentionality around that side of it.
All right. So that's Meg and Amy's hot take.